this something new out of randomness, I guess. I kind of enjoy diving into the randomness of the universe. So at times I just try to dive into random Wikipedia article just to kind of, see what different knowledge or concept I might stumble into. And then I realized I also enjoy reading comments and reviews of random people. So that's one other random thing I'm gonna start doing, I guess. Just read random comments on IMDb because why not? Uh, at the same time, I like random Reddit articles and comments following that as well. So, what we're gonna do is just use the magic of website, magic of internet to kind of select what topic we will, go through today. So it's kind of like a random within a randomness. So let's see. So, wow. Okay. So we're gonna check out random Wikipedia page, and well, I was kind of hoping that we landed onto IMDb because it's always kind of fun to read some of the comments from uh, disappointed or angry reviewers. But instead, we will dive into the random article. All right, so welcome to Wikipedia. And what's uh, something unique about today is that Apollo 4 was the first flight in the Apollo program and served as an initial uncrewed test of the Saturn V rocket, the first launch from Kennedy Space Center, Florida, where the space vehicle was assembled. It was originally planned to take place early in 1967, but was delayed to November 9 due to a myriad of issues. These included the need for additional inspections following the Apollo first, a fire that killed the first Apollo crew in January 1967. Apollo 4 was an all up test, meaning that the spacecraft was fully functional on its initial flight, the first such for NASA. The Apollo 4 command module splashed down just under 9 hours after its launch, having completed all objectives. NASA deemed the mission a complete success as it proved that the Saturn V rocket worked, which was important in achieving NASA's overall goal of landing astronauts on the moon and bringing them back safely by the end of 1960s. Okay, so that is a featured article for today, and I have no idea why. For some reason I thought like that spaceship was launched today, but doesn't seems to be the case. Anyhow, in the news we have the cycling tournament, the Tour de France. Nice. In that, Jonas Vingegaard won. Sorry, Jonas, if I messed up your name. But Jonas is a Danish cyclist who rides for UCI World Team, Team Jumbo Visma. He won the 2022 edition of the Tour de France. Wow. So they already updated the Wikipedia page for him. This is one of the things which I observed about Wikipedia, like the because it's sort of like a community um, shared pedia, I guess, or collection of articles. The community tend to kind of react quickly or act quickly and update the articles frequently and whenever needed. So, meaning I've seen articles about, say, famous celebrities or athletes and who knows what, uh, like politicians and whatnot. And I've seen like whenever they die, the articles are updated within a matter of like hours. So it feels kind of like you will find a lot of update information, and again, it's questionable how much of this information is accurate, because at the end of the day, people who are writing these articles, they are not journalists. They are collecting uh, various articles from the internet, and they are creating a collage and creating a narrative based on those articles. So I mean, uh, I I I kind of just lean towards like just trusting the users or administrators, whoever update the articles, because it's easier that way. But at the same time, I kind of trust like 80% of whatever they write, or whatever is there on the Wikipedia. And the rest 20% on Wikipedia is always gonna be BS. So that's how I try to process and try to figure out which 80% is the accurate information. Um, uh, all right, moving on. The World Health Organization declares the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Okay, so another outbreak. And then we have the Chinese paddlefish, one of the world's largest freshwater fish species, is declared extinct by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. I think we kind of read this during our last stream. Uh, yeah, and also this. So Sri Lanka has have a new president now. Although I believe they have a prime minister uh, kind of democracy, so I'm not sure how much power the president actually have. All right, let's check out some random article. And today we're gonna learn about Hasanpura, which is a village in Ghazipur district of Uttar Pradesh in India. Uh, wow. So, what's that's it. That's its whole identity. Hasanpura is just a village. But let's see how many people live within that village. 2,000 people, which is not bad. And the data is also kind of over a decade old. Established in 1800. Wow, so 222 years ago. Let's check out Ghazipur. Ghazipur district is a district of UP, state in northern India. The city of Ghazipur is the district headquarters. The district is part of Varanasi division. The region of Ghazipur is famous mainly for the production of its unique rose scented spray called Gulab Jal, and for the tomb of the Governor General of British India, Lord Cornwallis, who died here. His tomb is situated in western part of city and is conserved by Archaeological Survey of India. Early history. The district has derived its name from its headquarters town of Ghazipur. It was during the reign of Harsha, a Chinese pilgrim known with the name of Hein Ti Sang, came to the district. And in his days, the place was known as Chen Chu, interpreting in English as the kingdom of the Lord of Battles, which has been given various nomenclatures like Yud, Yuddhapati Yudharanpura, Garzapatipura, and the last one probably who the modern Ghazipur as adopted by Lord Cunningham. The Chinese pilgrim Han Ti-sang had stated that a stupa was erected by Ashoka in the memory of Buddha, who had been here in the district. Regarding the nomenclature of Ghazipur, there has also been a version that it has its derivation from the word Ghadi or Ghadi, nahi, Ghadi, who happened to be a Hindu king in the 9th century. The original name of the place was Ghadipura, but Gandhipura was located a little far from the present city of Ghazipur. So what this has to do with this? Okay, uh, is just saying like it's supposed to be Gadipura, but there is another village or another district called Gandhipura. That's why they changed it to Ghazipur. No idea. But according to one story, Raja Mandata was said to have been an heir of Prithviraj of Delhi and was suffering from a skin disease and wanted to get rid of the affliction by bathing in the tank at Kathor. He did take bath under the direction of Brahmins and cured sometimes later. After overcoming his disease, he settled in Ghazipur and built a fort. Subsequently, his nephew and his successors seized a Muslim girl whose mother got worried for her daughter, and as a measure for the safety of her daughter, she appealed to the Sultan of Delhi, with the result that a band of 40 Ghazis under the headship of Ghazi Sayyid Mausud reached Kathor and captured the fort and slew Raja Mandata and his nephew. Thus, the Ghazis got charge of the area, and where Masud is supposed traditionally to have founded a city in 1330, commemorating his newly acquired title of Malik us Sadal Ghazi. He established a new city near to the old Gandhipura, and the place got named Ghazipur. Okay. The region covered by the present district of Ghazipur once formed part of the ancient kingdom of Kashi, a famous center of Aryan civilization. This is where it becomes kind of tricky for people who don't understand that Aryan, um, which a lot of people pronounce as Aryan, actually, in here at least. It's a deeper um, um, concept, I guess, and which was hijacked by Nazis. Clearly, I mean, and also Nazis hijacked the swastika symbol. So both the Aryan concept as well as the symbol is sort of like the tradition of um, the India. So and again, this Aryan concept is completely different from what Aryan concept of Nazis was or is. Um, Anyhow, let's check out. Aryan or Arya is a term originally used as an ethnocultural self-designation by Indo-Iranians in ancient times, in contrast to the nearby outsiders known as non-Aryan. In ancient India, the term Arya was used by the Indo Aryan speakers of the Vedic period as an endonym and in reference. Um, that actually might be a good article to check out. All right, so let's let's learn something. Aryan or Arya is a term originally used as an ethnocultural self designation by Indo Iranians in ancient times, in contrast to the nearby outsiders known as non Aryan. In ancient India, the term Arya was used by the Indo Aryan speakers of the Vedic period as an endonym which means self designation, and in reference to a region known as Aryavarta, which means abode of the Aryas, where the Indo Aryan culture emerged. In the Avesta scriptures, ancient Iranian people similarly used the term Arya to designate themselves as an ethnic group, and in reference to their mystical homeland, Aryanem Vaijo, which means expanse of the Aryans or stretch of the Aryans. The stem also forms the etymological source of place names such as Iran, which is Aryanum, and Alania, which is Ariana. Okay. Although the stem Arya may be of Proto Indo European origin, its use as an ethno-cultural self-designation is only attested among Indo-Iranian people, and it is not known if PIE, which is Proto-Indo-European speakers, had a term to designate themselves as Proto-Indo-European. In any case, scholars point out that even in ancient times, the idea of being an Aryan was religious, cultural, and linguistic, not racial. In the 1850s, the term Aryan was adopted as a racial category by French writer Arthur de Gobineau, who, through the later works of Houston Stewart Chamberlain, influenced the Nazi racial ideology. Under Nazi rule from 1933 to 45, the term applied to most inhabitants of Germany, excluding Jews. Aryan certificate, or now I think Aryan certificate, was a primary requirement to become a Reich citizen for those who were of German or related blood and wanted to become Reich citizens after the Nuremberg laws were passed in 1935. A Swede or an Englishman, a Frenchman or Czech, a Pole or Italian was considered to be related, that is, Aryan. Those classified as non Aryans, especially Jews, were discriminated against before suffering the systematic mass killing known as the Holocaust. See Porajmos for the genocide of the Romani people. The atrocities committed in the name of the Aryanist supremacist ideologies have led academics to generally avoid the term Aryan, which has been replaced in most cases by Indo Iranian, although the South Asian branch is still known as Indo Aryan. Etymology. The term Arya was first rendered into a modern European language in 1771 as Aryans by French Indologist Abraham Hyacinthe Anquetil Duperron, who rightly compared the Greek Aryoi with the Avestan area and the country name Iran. A German translation of Anquetil Duperron's work led to the introduction of the term Aryer in 1776. The Sanskrit, the Sanskrit word Arya is rendered as noble in William Jones' 1794 translation of the Indian laws of Manu, and the English Aryan, originally spelt Arian, appeared a few decades later, first as an adjective in 1839, then as a noun in 1851. Indo Iranian. The Sanskrit word Arya was originally an ethno-cultural term designating those who spoke Vedic Sanskrit and adhered to Vedic cultural norms, including religious rituals and poetry. In contrast to an outsider or an Arya, a non Arya, by the time of the Buddha, which was around 5th to 4th century BCE. It took the meaning of noble. In old Iranian languages, the Avestan term area, which in Old Persian is Ariya, was likewise used as an ethnocultural self designation by ancient Iranian peoples, in contrast to an Anarya, a non Arya. It designated those who belonged to the Aryan or Iranian ethnic stock, spoke the language, and followed the religion of the Aryas. These two terms derive from the reconstructed Proto Indo Iranian term Arya or Aryo, which was probably the name used by the prehistoric Indo Iranian peoples to designate themselves as an ethnocultural group. The term did not have any racial connotation, which only emerged later in the works of 19th century Western writers. According to David W. Anthony, the Rig Veda and Avesta agreed that the essence of their shared parental Indo Iranian identity was the linguistic and ritual, not racial. If a person sacrificed to the right gods in the right way using the correct form of the traditional hymns and poems, that person was an Arya or Aryan. Whereas in Proto Indo European, since Adolf Pictet, uh, a number of scholars have proposed to derive the Indo Iranian system Arya from the reconstructed Proto Indo European term Haros or I don't know how to pronounce that, but I would just say heroes or herios, I guess. But variously translated as members of one's own group, peer, freeman, as host, guest, kingsman, or as lord, ruler. However, the proposed Anatolian, Celtic, and Germanic cognates are not universally accepted. In any case, the Indo Iranian ethnic connotation is absent from the other Indo European languages, which rather conceive the possible cognates of Arya as a social status, and there is no evidence that Proto Indo European speakers had a term to refer to themselves as Proto Indo Europeans. All right, let's check out the historical usage of the term Arya or area, Aryan, right? That's how they pronounce here. All right, the term Arya was used by Proto-Indo-Iranian speakers to designate themselves as an ethno-cultural group encompassing those who spoke the language and followed the religion of the Aryas, as designated from the nearby outsiders known as the Anaryas. Indo Iranian are generally associated with the Sintashta culture, named after the Sintashta archaeological site in Chelyabinsk Oblast, Russia. Interesting. Linguistic evidence show that Proto-Indo-Iranian, Proto-Aryan speakers dwelled in the Eurasian steppe south of the early Uralic tribes. The stem Arya was notably borrowed into the pre-Sami language as Orya. At the origin of orgy, did I say orgy? Uh, or orgy? I think sounds like orgy. At the origin of orgy, and argel, the loan word took the meaning slave in other Finno-Permic language, suggesting conflictual relations between Indo-Iranian and Uralic peoples in prehistoric times. The stem is also found in the Indo-Iranian god Aryaman. Aryaman, translated as Arya-spirited, Aryanness, or Aryanhood. He was known in Vedic Sanskrit as Aryaman and in Avestan as Aryaman. The deity was in charge of welfare and the community and connected with the institution of marriage. Through marital ceremonies, one of the functions of Ahriman was to assimilate women from other tribes to the host community. If the Irish heroes, Ahriman or Erem, and the Gaulish personal name Ariomanus are also cognates, that is, linguistic siblings sharing a common origin. A deity of Proto Indo European origin named Hierom- Hieromen may also be posited. But what is this? Aryaman is one of the early Vedic Hindu deities. His name signifies life partner, close friend, partner, playfellow, or companion. He is the third son of Kashyap and Aditi, the father and mother of the Adityas, and is depicted as the mid morning sun disk. Huh. Wow. See, there are so many Hindu deities, and that I don't remember ever hearing about Aryaman. But what about Aryaman in the Avestan culture? In the Avesta, Aryaman is both an Avestan language common noun as well as the proper name of a Zoroastrian divinity. Uh, I don't want to dive into that article right now. All right, so in ancient India, Vedic Sanskrit speakers viewed the term Arya as a religious linguistic category. Wait, didn't we just went through this? Oh, we went. Yeah, so most of this is repeated. I mean, yeah, I don't know why it's this sentence seems pretty familiar. I'm sure I read that earlier up there somewhere. Anyhow, Vedic Sanskrit speakers viewed the term Arya as a religious linguistic category, referring to those who spoke the Sanskrit language and adhered to Vedic cultural norms, especially those who worshipped the Vedic gods, Indra and Agni in particular, took part in the sacrifices and festivals, and practiced the art of poetry. Just checking if there's anything in there. All right. The non Aryans designated primarily those who were not able to speak the Arya language correctly. The Mlecha or Mridharvak, Mridharvak. However, Arya is used only once in the Vedas to designate the language of the text. The Vedic area being defined in the Kositaki Aryanaka, no, Aryanyaka, the Aryan, Aryan, the Aryanyakas. The Aryanyakas are the part of the ancient Indian Vedic concerned with the meaning of ritual sacrifice. They typically represent the later sections of the Vedas and are one of the many layers of the Vedic text. The other parts of the Vedas are the Samhitas, Brahmanas, which is some sort of commentary. All right, so some 35 names of Vedic tribes, chief, and poets mentioned in the Rig Veda were of non Aryan origin, demonstrating that cultural assimilation to the Arya community was possible, and or that some Aryan families chose to give non-Aryan names to their newborns. In the words of Indologist Michael Witzel, the term Arya does not mean a particular. In the words of Indologist Michael Witzel, the term Arya, quote, does not mean a particular people or even a particular racial group, but all those who had joined the tribe speaking Vedic Sanskrit and adhere to their cultural norms, such as ritual, poetry, etc. End quote. In the later, yeah, and there are places with the same name, such as in ancient Sanskrit literature, the term Aryavarta Aryavart mean adopted as Aryas, like we read earlier up there. Uh, yeah, in Latin literature, the word Arianus was used to designate Ariana, the area comprising Afghanistan, Iran, northwestern India, and Pakistan. In 1601, Philemon Holland used Arianus in his translation of the Latin Arianus to designate the inhabitants of the Ariana. This was the first term of the form Aryan verbatim in the English language. Ariana was a general geographical term used by some Greek and Roman authors of the ancient period for a district of wide extent between Central Asia and the Indus River, comprising the eastern provinces of the Achaemenid, uh, Achaemenid Empire that covered the whole of modern day Afghanistan. Wow, it is freaking long article. Let's see what happened to this term during British Raj. In India, the British colonial government had followed the Gobineau's arguments along another line and had fostered the idea of a superior Aryan race that co opted the Indian caste system in favor of imperial interests. In its fully developed form, the British mediated, interpreted foresaw a segregation of Aryan and non Aryan along the lines of caste, with the upper caste being Aryan and the lower ones being non Aryan. The European developments not only allowed the British to identify themselves as high caste, but also allowed the Brahmins to view themselves as on par with the British. Further, it provoked the reinterpretation of Indian history in racialist and in opposition Indian nationalist terms and its ties to the Nazism and white supremacy. Through the works of Houston Stewart Chamberlain, Gobineau's ideas influenced the Nazi racial ideology, which saw the Aryan race as innately superior to other putative racial groups. The Nazi official Alfred Rosenberg argued for a new, quote, religion of the blood, unquote, based on the supposed innate promptings of the Nordic soul to defend its noble character against racial and cultural degeneration. Rosenberg believed the Nordic race to be descendant from Proto Aryans, a hypothetical prehistoric people who dwelt on the northern German plains and who had ultimately origin from the lost continent of Atlantis, of course. Under Rosenberg, the theories of Arthur de Gobineau, Georges Vacher de Lapoge, Blavatsky, Houston Stewart Chamberlain, Madison Grant, and those of Hitler all culminated in Nazi Germany's race policies and the Aryanization decrees of the 1920s, 30s, and early 1940s. In its appalling medical model, the annihilation of the racial inferior Untermenschen was sanctioned as the excision of a deceased organ in an otherwise healthy body, which led to Holocaust. According to the Nazi racial theorists, the term Aryans described the Germanic peoples, and they considered the purest Aryans to be those that belonged to a Nordic race physical idea, which they referred to as the master race. However, a satisfactory definition of Aryan remained problematic during Nazi Germany. Although the physical ideal of Nazi racial theorists was typically the tall, blonde-haired, and light-eyed Nordic individual, such theorists accepted the fact that a considerable variety of hair and eye color existed within the racial categories they recognized. For example, Adolf Hitler and many Nazi officials had dark hair and were still considered members of the Aryan race under Nazi racial doctrine, because the determination of an individual's racial type depended on a preponderance of many characteristics in an individual rather than on just one defining feature. Wow, didn't knew Nazis supported diversity. In September 1935, the Nazis passed the Nuremberg Laws. All Aryan race citizens were required to prove their Aryan ancestry. One way was to obtain an NN pass, which means ancestor pass, by providing proof through baptismal certificates that all four grandparents were of Aryan descent. In December of the same year, the Nazis founded Lebensborn, which means fount of life, to counteract the falling Aryan birth rates in Germany and to promote Nazi eugenics. Wait, what? Lebensborg was an SS initiated, state supported, registered association in Nazi Germany with the goal of raising the birth rate of Aryan children of people classified as racially pure and healthy, based on Nazi racial hygiene and health ideology. Many Americans, white supremacist neo Nazi groups, and prison gangs refer to themselves as Aryans, including the Aryan Brotherhood and Aryan Nations, and the Aryan Republican Army, the White Aryan Resistance, or the Aryan Circle. Modern nationalist political groups and neo pagan movements in Russia claim a direct linkage between themselves as slaves and the ancient Aryans. And in some Indian nationalist circles, the term Aryan can also be used in reference to an alleged Aryan race. The Aryan invasion theory. So, translating the sacred Indian text of the Rig Veda in the 1840s, German linguist Friedrich Max Muller found that he believed was evidence of an ancient invasion of India by Hindu Brahmins, a group which he called the Arya. In his later works, Muller was careful to note that he thought that Arya or Aryan was a linguistic rather than a racial category. Nevertheless, scholars used Muller's invasion theory to propose their own visions of racial conquest through South Asia and the Indian Ocean. In 1885, the New Zealand polymath Edward Trigger argued that an Aryan tidal wave had washed over India and continued to push south through the islands of the East Indian archipelago, reaching the distinct shores of New Zealand. Scholars such as John Batchelor, Edmund the Quatrefagus, and Daniel Brinton extended this invasion theory to the Philippines, Hawaii, and Japan, identifying indigenous peoples who they believed were the descendants of the early Aryan conquerors. With the discovery of the Indus Valley Civilization, mid 20th century archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler argued that the large urban civilization had been destroyed by the Aryans. This position was later discredited, with climate acidification becoming the likely cause of the collapse of the Indus Valley Civilization. The term invasion, which, while it was once commonly used in regard to Indo-Aryan migration, is now usually used only by opponents of the Indo-Aryan migration theory. The term invasion does not any longer reflect the scholarly understanding of the Indo-Aryan migrations. and is now generally regarded as polemical, distracting, and unscholarly. In recent decades, the idea of an Aryan migration into India has been disputed mainly by Indian scholars who claim various alternate indigenous Aryan scenarios contrary to established Kurgan model. However, these alternate scenarios are rooted in the traditional and religious views of Indian history and identity and are universally rejected in mainstream scholarship. According to Michael Witzel, the indigenous Aryans position is not scholarship in the usual sense, but an apologetic, ultimately religious undertaking. A number of other alternative theories have been proposed, including Anatolian hypothesis, Armenian hypothesis, the Paleolithic continuity theory, but they are not widely accepted and have received little or no interest in mainstream scholarship. Wow, that was a kind of fun ride. We we sort of started from a random village in one of the districts in one of the states of India, and from there we landed on this page about Aryan, Aryan or Aryan, however you want to pronounce, and the cultural relevance of the term, the concept. Yeah, and it's hard to say or predict what was true or real. What really happened thousands of years back. Who knows? And these are not even like 4 or 5 thousand. Oh, sorry, could be 4 or 5 thousand, or maybe even more. Who knows? Uh, because the Egyptian civilization itself is like 7,000 years old, and I believe Indus Valley is like 5-ish thousand years old. So whatever happened here gotta happen like before that, right? Like based on the theory. But at some point, I mean, if you kind of believe the hypothesis that the life itself originated in Africa, or I would say the Pangea, right? The one continent or a big chunk of landmass it used to be in. Over time, it kind of like separated and broke into all the 7 continents we know today. So who knows? Life probably, started somewhere when all the continents were forged together. As a, so maybe like few 100,000 years old back, or I don't know if it was millions of years back, but I mean, obviously the life started millions of years back. So, but I don't remember the Panasia or Pania continent. Let's actually check it out. Pangea, Pangea, I think. Um, I know we're about to wrap this up, and I'm um, diving into a new page. But the supercontinent Pangaea in the early Mesozoic, which is 200 MA, probably means millions year old. Uh, yeah, so this supercontinent kind of split into the continents we know today. Uh, but I think the life must have started when it was still the supercontinent called Pangea, and it's fascinating how you know we have like similar roots for various words. Like especially when it comes down to the basic relationships like mom. Like it's pretty much all the languages I know, or most of the languages I know, have like the ma syllable or the sound in mom. Like in Hindi, it's like ma. In Telugu, it's amma, so it's still like ma. Um, and I'm sure like a lot of other, like in Islam or Arabic rather, it's ammi. So it's so and even in English, it's like mama or mummy or mom. So it's all starts with the M, and it's so unique. Like I don't know if there's like a root, some sort of common root, but my hypothesis is because babies are too dumb to kind of uh, use any complicated words. So the very early sounds baby makes are whatever the vocal cords allow, I guess. So maybe like ma being like such a common sound, it's easier to associate ma with mama, with mummy, with ma, with mom, with however you want to call your mom. And that's how in India like dads are normally called like papa, which used to be the case here as well, I guess, like a century back or something. But it's the same concept, like papa, and the grandfather is dada in Hindi, so it's like still the same word, like and grandmother is dadi. So like it's such a simple a way to kind of learn the association, right? Like you just use the same um, word ma and mama. Now it's mom, and now you have like a whole meaning associated in your mind. Like whenever someone says mom, brings up mom, talks about mom, or remotely even if you even read a word mom, like that automatically takes you to the mother figure in your life. Your mom as well as all the other mother figures, I guess. But that's how I guess memories and mind work. It needs that association. It needs that hooks to kind of tap into and um, uh, and build on that, I guess. But anyhow, I gotta go. This has been nice. Good to kind of learn about something new, and maybe this was um, eye opening to a lot of people. Maybe maybe not. Either way, have a good day.